Hello. The reading this morning comes from Mark's Gospel, the first chapter, beginning at verse 29. As soon as they had left the synagogue, they entered the house of Simon and Andrew with James and John. Now Simon's mother-in-law was in bed with a fever, and they told him about her at once. He came and he took her by the hand and lifted her up. Then the fever left her, and she began to serve them. That evening at sundown they brought to him all who were sick or possessed with demons, and the whole city was gathered around the door. And he cured many who were sick with various diseases, and cast out many demons. And he would not permit the demons to speak, because they knew him. In the morning, while it was still very dark, he got up and went out to his deserted place, and there he prayed. And Simon and his companions hunted for him. When they found him, they said to him, "Everyone is searching for you." He answered, "Let us go on to the neighboring towns, so that I may proclaim the message there also, for that is what I came out to do." And he went throughout Galilee, proclaiming the message in their synagogues and casting out demons. I wonder how you would feel if your son was coming home for supper and bringing a special friend with him. He not only obviously had his brother and his two friends, James and John, but this was going to be a special evening. His mother-in-law would have done everything in her power to be able to serve them, to put up a good meal for them. So she must have had a really bad fever that laid her low to be in bed when they arrived. Jesus goes up to her, lifts her up, and cures her. And she then enters downstairs and serves them. It may seem odd to us that a sick woman can get up and then be expected to wait on others. But in fact, in Jewish tradition, as she was the eldest female there, she was hostess. It was her job to serve the people who came. She would have lost faith if she hadn't done that. Not necessarily to do the cooking, but to make sure that all her guests were comfortable, maybe provide water for them to wash their feet and their hands. All those sort of things. To make sure there was space around the table for them, and that the food that was served was of a good standard. That was her role. So Jesus not only cures her physically, but also allows her to continue the job that is hers, the role that is hers. And that is important, isn't it? Because we all have roles in life, and we all want to do those works that we think we are called to do. And Jesus recognises that and allows us, if we have faith, to do what we are called to do. He must have been absolutely exhausted by the time he went to bed that night. All those people that he cured of their diseases and their demons. And yet, he knows what he has to do. And the following morning, he gets up early, takes himself away from all distractions to pray to God. That's quite difficult for us sometimes these days, isn't it? To take ourselves away from distractions. How often do we sit down to pray? And if we're lucky enough to have people in our household, there's suddenly a call of, "Do you want coffee?" Or "Where's so-and-so? And I can't find this, and I can't find that." Or what are we doing next? If we're on our own even, maybe their phone rings, or suddenly you remember that you've left the kettle on or something on the stove, or there's all sorts of things that call us away from God. To find time to be with Him is often very difficult, but it should be a priority in our lives. If we want to follow the life that Jesus led, we can take His example, how He frequently took Himself off to pray by Himself, quietly, to be with God. And that's something that we must aim to do as well. And that last part of the reading is also quite interesting. Don't forget, this is the first chapter of Mark, because Jesus is going on into the towns of Galilee. Where is he going when he gets there? He goes into the synagogues. He is still now taking the message to the Jewish people. That was his primary role. It's only much later that his ministry widens to include the Gentiles, to include those not of the Jewish faith, wherever they come from. But here we see him going into the synagogues, spreading the news, spreading his message that they must turn again to God. The rituals, the rules that they keep are not as vital to God as faith in God, loving and loving one's neighbour. That's his message, and that is why he travels so quickly from one place to another. It's incidental that he cures people on the way. Lots of us remember the curing of the various diseases more than we remember sometimes his ministry, what his words say. But for him, spreading the gospel was his primary motive. That's what he came to do. And he must have done it extremely well, because as he goes from place to place, his fame is spreading. And people want to come and they want to listen. And once he has been round visiting the synagogues and talking there and doing what he has to do there, it's only a bit later on that we get the Sermon on the Mount. But by then, people are ready to listen because they've already heard him once. They know what he wants of them. And now they can listen to what he has to say to anyone who will take the time to sit down and listen to Jesus. And if we can do that too, then with faith, maybe we can also serve others, just as Peter's mother-in-law did. Amen.